Hi, I'm Sailor Eric. On the last day of August during the Saturday of Labor Day weekend 2024, I was invited to sail on a 68-foot steel-hulled Gaff Rigged Herreshoff designed schooner. Saturday was a pleasant sunny day with light winds coming from the east. The impetus of the wind seemed to be an offshore breeze. Chicago was expecting two cold fronts to arrive in succession, bringing with it higher winds from the west and north over Sunday and Monday. This would create a heavier sea state on Lake Michigan for the remainder of the Labor Day weekend. This would also make for more challenging conditions for those racers returning on Sunday from across the lake in St. Joseph, Michigan, participating in the annual bi-state race from Chicago to St. Joseph and back. But Saturday was a great day to learn how to crew this particular tall ship, and we will be covering how the gaff-rigged main and foresails are properly raised and trimmed, how to leave and return to the dock in a 68-foot full-keeled sailboat, and how to turn this tall ship through the wind, which is known as tacking. And I'll provide some background and a profile of the current owner and captain of Perception, Jordan, as I was genuinely impressed with how Jordan is approaching his sailing ambitions. So let's get to it. I arrived at the dockside of Perception with three friends whom I've sailed with before: Paul, Deborah, and Jennifer. This was the first time I was meeting Jordan in person, and we quickly learned he was not bringing any crew members of his own. This made an immediately favorable impression in my mind, as Jordan recently acquired the sailboat, and he must have a level of competence and confidence to host aboard a set of crew members whom he never sailed with before. He thought it would be a good idea to go through raising the gaff-rigged main and foresails before departing the dock, so we would become familiar with the lines. Jordan first went up the main mast ladder to clear a line which was meant to keep the halyards from making noise while at dock. Next, Jordan showed us how to sweat the lines, which is essentially pulling the lines down to raise the sails and gather the slack using a wind around the belay pins as leverage so as to lock the line in place for the next pull.
To be able to raise the sail, these sails you can, surprisingly, this is a pretty easy boat to sail for how big it is. Like, I was kind of shocked because I heard a lot of nonsense about gaffers, but this sail is...
I agree with Jordan that raising this gaff-rigged main turned out to be super easy. I am about to put my hand on the forward main halyard for the gaff, while the line immediately behind it is the aft main halyard for the gaff. Both are raised simultaneously to keep the gaff, or the top of the sail, level while being raised. Here, Jordan is raising the foresail, which is why it is about to go up much more swiftly, while Paul and Deborah are raising the mainsail, where Paul is on the fore halyard and Deborah is managing the aft halyard. Jennifer is tailing the aft halyard line for Deborah. Notice the collars or hoops around the main mast as the sail is raised. These collars created surprisingly little friction or drag as the sail is raised. Paul and Deborah are working together to keep the top of the sail level as it is raised. Also, notice these smaller lines coming down at a diagonal from the top of the mast down to the boom at intervals. These both serve as lazy jacks to gather the sail as it is lowered, and as a topping lift to give the boom support. At this point, the peak halyard would be pulled up further. so that the gaff would rest at a diagonal to properly trim the mainsail. The next thing Jordan wanted to talk us through was docking and undocking with a full-keeled 68-foot schooner, as the boat takes extremely slow and methodical turns and is very heavy. I thought using this graphic would be the best way to summarize his methodology. First, take note of the dock line configuration. The bow and stern lines keep the boat within a short distance of the dock and check horizontal or side-to-side movement. The spring lines check the forward and backward or vertical movement of the boat on the dock. Jordan's main dock line is the aft spring line, which is attached to the dock further back toward the stern, but is attached to the boat forward toward the bow. This line checks forward momentum, and as it becomes taut, the boat moves closer to the dock. To leave the dock, Jordan starts the engine and puts the boat into gear at a low idle. This causes the boat to move forward into the slip, putting the aft spring line under tension. All other dock lines at this point are not under tension. The crew is then free to take off all other dock lines from the dock. All of the dock lines are then kept cleated on the schooner in their proper locations. Then, when only the aft spring line remains and all of the crew is aboard, Jordan then puts the boat into reverse gear and slowly backs out of the slip in a straight line. The aft spring line is uncleated from the schooner and placed on a raised catching stick at the dock as the schooner proceeds past it. This is the only line left at the dock and will allow a crew member to easily retrieve it and recleat it at the forward cleat when the schooner is pulled back into the slip. This one line will allow the schooner to dock easily with forward momentum, as the line will arrest that forward momentum and pull the vessel to the dockside. You are now watching as Jordan maneuvers our way out of 31st Street Harbor. Jordan's slip is immediately next to the main harbor fairway and the main harbor entrance. The harbor is designed so that the largest boats and slips are available on the south end of the harbor. This is nearest to the harbor mouth and the harbor's public gas docks. Maneuvering a 68-foot long full-keeled schooner does take some finesse, given her location to the main harbor fairway, and you can see Jordan slowly backing the schooner as close to the eastern rock wall as possible to give his bow room to turn from west to south or 90 degrees to port. The high-stacked rock walls give 31st Street Harbor a high level of protection. The boats in this harbor do not feel the lake swells and are protected from all sides. But the narrowness of the harbor mouth and the height of the walls does make this entrance a choke point, and there is a challenge to see whether other boats are stacked up to come in or out of the mouth. You can make out two buoys or markers to our forward port quarter. These markers are meant to be rounded and kept to port as the boat is departing the harbor entrance, or to starboard as the boat is entering the harbor entrance. This might have to do with the depth and a channel, but I think it also has to do with providing greater visibility of boats as they enter the harbor by boats exiting the harbor. Here is how the sails look as we were trimmed to be close hauled. The schooner's sail plan was similar to my ketch in that she had a furling jib and a hanked-on staysail. The divergence would come with having the main mast further back, the gaff rigging, and the size of the sails. It seems like about 50 degrees with the wind at about 7 to 8 knots was about as close as we could get into the wind without pinching. As the video cuts over to the mainsail, note the slight diagonal crease coming down from the top of the mast in the mainsail. We fixed this by adding more tension to the aft halyard. Joining someone on their sailboat for the first time is a lot like going on a first date. You have no idea how competent nor how difficult it might be to work with a ship's captain, whom you've never met before. How a ship's captain handles stressful situations is extremely important, as a stressful situation can occur at any time when sailing. Someone who does not handle stress well can be a liability. But I'm happy to say it was a genuine pleasure to sail with Jordan and learn about his past sailing adventures, his reasons for obtaining perception, and about his ambition for future sailing. I found Jordan to be well-read on the subject of sailing. He referenced numerous authors of classic sailing adventures, such as Hal Roth, Bernard Moitessier, and Joshua Slocum. I found him very knowledgeable on the breadth of subject matters required for someone who aspires to sail on or across oceans. He has an engineering background which lends itself well to understanding boat systems and seamanship. He lives in a house with space dedicated to woodworking and metalworking. Interest in building things with one's hands is also a value for a boat owner. He has sought sailing opportunities in northern latitudes and met with or sailed with experts in those locations. He met Drake from Drake Paragon YouTube channel and sailed with a podcaster, Andy Schell from the 59 North Sailing Podcast. Jordan purchased his schooner from Traverse City, Michigan, and had it delivered to Chicago less than 3 months ago. And he hopes to sail it out the St. Lawrence Seaway for some northern latitude Arctic sailing at some point in the future. The steel hull would be a big advantage when sailing in areas where ice, Berkey bits, growlers, and icebergs might reside. A steel hull has a greater chance of withstanding an inadvertent bump with ice than a fiberglass hull. He also reasoned that purchasing an existing boat, which requires a lot of work, would be less expensive and less time-consuming than building a boat from scratch, which is something he considered. He seems keen to do much of the work himself, though he holds no illusions for the amount of cost and time which might be required into such an endeavor. His family has access to some private land south of Chicago, and he hopes to haul out Perception and ship it on a trailer to that location where he will work on it for up to 2 years. Simply obtaining a crane to properly take the boat off a truck's trailer at a private destination will be expensive. We discussed all sorts of potential enhancements to the boat, such as water storage, a hydro generator, a diesel furnace, or a stove. As he has done some Arctic sailing, he understands the importance of systems to dry clothing and warm up crew members and how important that might be. To quote Tom Cunliffe in his book, The Yacht Master's Guide to Heavy Weather Cruising, the sea is no respecter of half measures. Jordan strikes me as one who understands this. I can't stress how much I wish for good fortune and for Jordan to be able to attain his future endeavors and sailing dreams. This is where we are going through a tack. Tacking the boat means turning the boat through the wind. We were sailing on a port tack where the wind was coming from the port side and the sails were pushed over to the starboard side. But now we are turning the schooner's bow to port through the wind, and the sails will come over the port side as the wind now comes from the starboard side relative to us. We will now be settling on a starboard tack. Tacking the schooner is relatively easy, as the main and forward sails shift from one side to the other on their own via the boom. The jib has to be pulled through to the starboard side of the boat with the jib sheet. I'm located forward in case the jib gets caught in the space between the forward stay and the jib's roller. The staysail is the last thing to be trimmed in the wake of tacking. I'd note that Jordan holds off on bringing the staysail over until the tack is completed, because a back-winded staysail can actually help the bow complete its turn through the wind, and it is not a high priority in managing trimming until later in the tack's process. I have a similar approach on Silvergate. We are now trimming the sail to head back to 31st Street Harbor on a broad reach, and you can see some minor creases in the forward gaff sail, which Jordan is attempting to trim out by adjusting the peak halyard.
I think that's
Slightly
better.
adjusting the height of the aft part of the gaff should optimize the sail trim and remove those slight diagonal folds in the sail. You can also see that the sail shape is not ideal and constrained by the wire shrouds behind the luff or forward part of the sail. This slightly disrupts the sail shape and prevents the sail from being let out further. We are now lining up to enter the harbor. We are under engine power, the sails are down, and we are watching the boat traffic to gauge the timing of our entrance. The narrowness of the opening and the height of the walls do make things a little more difficult. Entering the harbor and docking the boat is arguably the most stressful point of a sail trip for a ship's captain, and the crew can help alleviate that by staying aware, communicating, and doing what needs to be done. Despite the challenge of boat traffic, the docking went smoothly, where we recovered the aft spring line from the dock, which was on a catching stand, attached it to a forward cleat on the port bow, and as we pulled forward into the slip, the spring line took the tension and brought us into the dock laterally while arresting our forward movement. We were then free to put all the remaining dock lines onto the dock. If you stayed until the end of the video, I want to thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit that like button. For my current subscribers, thank you for supporting the channel. And if you are not a subscriber and you want to see future content like this, please subscribe. Again, thanks for watching.